I am here very, very pleased to be with Soraya Sheppard, Executive Director of Color Me Africa Fine Arts, a nonprofit organization centered on creating an awareness of African visual artists in the U.S. and Canada. How are you today, Soraya?
I'm absolutely wonderful. And how are you?
Doing very, very well. Always happy to be joined with amazing leaders that have started organizations to raise awareness about things that they're passionate about. Tell me a little bit about yourself, how you started Color Me Africa, and your background. You have an amazing origin story, like background story that I was reading on the website, and I want the listeners to hear because it's not every day you get to speak to somebody who, immigrated from Africa during apartheid. So it's really, really cool to get to speak with you.
Thank you so much. Yep. So I was born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa, during apartheid. And, we went through a really terrible time experiencing real oppression. And real segregation. Now, one would look at me and say, well, what are you? Because you're not Black, and I'm certainly not white. And that was always this dichotomy we were living with. There were those of us, much like in the United States, where people look lighter skinned. And, but my background is my great-grandmother was a Black woman. My mother was mixed with German and Black. And that's how this gene pool shifted over time. But in South Africa, if you had any kind of percentage of Black, you were considered non-white. And you bore the brunt of the laws that were created to oppress you, to segregate you, to subjugate you, to deny you from all the wonders of what's possible for any human being. And those were just basic human things. As I grew up, I really became aware that I'm living in a society of separate people. And, you would learn that you can't go there. You're not allowed to go there. You can't live in that place. You aren't allowed to go to university. Or you're not paid, or, you read the paper and you find out it's for whites only jobs. Non-whites need not apply. You'd see that written in the newspaper.
If you let me just intervene. So what would that do for you growing up, knowing that there were these ceilings that you would never be able to get past? Like, no matter how far you push yourself, there are these regulations in place that are there to literally prevent you from moving up in the world. How did that affect you growing up?
Well, there's a lot of depression, a lot of self-hate, anger, resentment. Just when you're young, you don't realize it's because of what the law says. You begin to believe that it's because of your race.
How you were born.
You were born not to do those things. You were born not to have those things. You were born not to be bright.
That is traumatic. That is that crushes motivation.
Right? And it literally had you believe my race is because I'm this race, therefore I can't. Therefore I won't even try. And I had the nerve to love art and want to pursue the creative fields, but there was no outlet for me. They did not teach art in the schools because they had a special education for people of color. And I would say non-whites, but I hate that word because those are the words that were created by the oppressor. So for example, I wanted to do fashion designing. And I went to school in Pretoria, which is sort of like the racist capital of the country at the time. And I was told, you can't come here. You're not allowed to come here.
Wow.
And it crushed me. I didn't even know. No one prepared me for such a response.
That's horrible.
So it just kind of left you with very few options in life. So you live this life of being forced into, but never really visualizing, creating from within. or ever believing that you can fulfill a dream that you have. And I came to this country knowing that I wanted to do something with my life. But then I realized wanting freedom and knowing how to live in freedom was a very different thing. Like I had to learn to be free.
Oh, can you tell me about that? Because that's something I never really thought about, having to learn to be free.
When you've been raised in an oppressed society and subjugated for so long, and listen, it was just I was 27 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
My formidable years and all of those years after that was only knowing oppression and restrictions and not even knowing myself. Mm-hmm. And the journey from having to uncover that has been a very long journey, and I'm talking years, and this is through many kinds of modalities. And I'll tell you, being able to just know it's okay to move about freely, mm-hmm. to get on a bus with anybody and everybody, mm-hmm. to sit next to people who are white and all colors, to eat in restaurants. I mean, even that was we couldn't eat in restaurants. Mm-hmm. To think for myself, mm-hmm. and be able to create what I want and trust that what I'm thinking and wanting to create is good for me. And then discovering my voice and discovering my power, discovering my humanity, discovering just the beauty of what I experience, and that I no longer have to live there, and that I can actually be a force for healing and a force for transformation. Mm-hmm. And that led me to wanting to do something for the country that I knew I could contribute in some way. Mm-hmm. And art spoke to me. My son is an artist, he's a visual artist. I was an artist, I never got to express it professionally. So I wanted to work with these artists. And so I visited to South Africa in 2011. I was in a coffee shop waiting on a friend, and they had a pop-up show in this really fancy mall, outdoorsy mall. And I struck up a conversation with the guy who was managing this pop-up. Mm-hmm. He's an artist from Zimbabwe. And I looked at the work and I'm like, oh my, this is beautiful. And just, I've always traveled and always bought art. Mm-hmm. And so our home was like a big art gallery, just art everywhere. So I realized, I've never seen such gorgeous pieces. How much are they? And he showed me, and then he said to me, but don't buy those, because the guy who owns these pieces is a dealer mm-hmm. in diamonds, and he deals art. But what they do is they go to the townships mm-hmm. and they'll buy the art for next to nothing. Mm-hmm. And you'll see those prices there because they are marketing it to tourists.
Wow. So it's just taking advantage of because these artists who actually make them have no other outlet where to present it or how to sell it.
The language to speak about it, mm-hmm. They don't speak English. Mm-hmm. They just create.
So there's a lot of dealers that take advantage of that and then resell it to tourists, because tourists think that they're buying something genuinely from Africa and supporting the culture without knowing what these dealers are doing.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it touched a nerve for me, because when I was young, I did modeling, a few years of that, trying it out. And I was always placed with the white crowd because of my complexion. But they knew I wasn't. But I had a look they wanted. And I was very oblivious to how things worked. I was young and naive. And I often didn't get paid for the work. And I remember sitting in a hair salon for a shoot I did. I got some small amount of money, but I was so happy to be chosen. That often happened to us, that you just accept what they give you.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting in a hair salon waiting to get my hair done, and I'm looking at this woman at the magazine up, and I see my face.
On a magazine?
On a magazine, and I never got paid for that.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a top name company, a very top brand in the country, and even probably it was a European company. Now I know if a white person had got done a shoot that, and they had a modeling agency they worked through, I was just discovered. Oh my God, you've got the perfect look for this.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what I recalled, and I said, you know what? I want to know who these guys are, and I want to know how they operate. And I got to know them, and I got to know how they operate. And when I went to their space, they had the guy by his own admission said, we've been collecting for 15 years. We've got about 25,000 pieces rolled up, and most of it are from the apartheid era.
Mm-hmm.
And that just broke my heart, because these artists I know died poor.
Yeah.
Or I know died unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got to know some of the more of how they operate, then I researched some of the artists in the collection they sent to me, and I discovered, I found these artists, I tracked them down, and they started to tell me their stories. And I actually engaged the guy, and I said to him, I would love for you to do a project with you, and if you bring some art to the United States, we'd like to exhibit them. And he thought he found his contact to bring work here. What he didn't realize is I had engaged the South African government to work with me, because I shared the story with them. Mm-hmm. And we brought art from the apartheid era and art from post-apartheid to show the work and share that story. And when he heard what I was doing, they backed off. Mm-hmm. And then it started to just unravel. So what I did with the work is I actually used that as seed money to create Color Me Africa Fine Arts. Mm. And to build the story on those. And so subsequently, the artists that I featured, some of the work that I had, we were able to bring one of those artists from a township, living out of a shack, no lights, no water. I have images of where he lives. I got him to get his passport. I coached him on how to do that, how to get a visa. 3 times he got declined by the embassy, because in his broken English, he said, I'm going to work there. Not the thing you want to say to an embassy official.
No.
So I finally got our senator's office to help me. This is an exhibition. They'll be in and out. Mm-hmm. He got his visa. He had never left his township. We put him on a plane. We picked him up in a limo, put him in one of the best hotels on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, and took him to a show in Chicago.
What a life-changing event. Did he speak English?
No, not much.
Oh my God, what a life-changing experience.
But fortunately for him, he was traveling with another artist who had done some traveling. So I selected her to come with him. We were funded by the government, and we had 2 South Africans who live here, one in LA and one in New York. And so they all converged on Chicago. And we had 4 South African artists, my first ever sort of international project, getting funded and all of that. And it was celebrating the 20th. It was celebrating our 20 years of democracy.
Wow.
So there we were. And he literally has gone from that artist who nobody really knew much about to going back to South Africa, and now he's in galleries.